introduce our speaker, I just want to share something that I read this week on Facebook, and there is really very much on Facebook that I would share with anybody. But this one said, you should always talk to the little people in life, meaning those with lesser jobs than you, i.e. custodians, receptionists, porters, wait staff, table cleaners, etc., but without whom a business might not survive. Someone taught me this very early in my career, and I've been practicing it my whole life. Don't do it expecting a return. Just practice it because it will make those people feel appreciated, and that can make miracles. So with that, welcome to Konnect to Thrive Mastermind with Lisa Danforth, whose talk is entitled, No is Not a Four-Letter Word. Set boundaries and lead a life of intention. Your busyness could be costing you the future you're working so hard for. With each yes and no, you're setting in the invisible line of boundaries that shape your time and financial freedom, choices, opportunities, and especially your most important relationships. Time, as we know, is a non-renewable resource. So when you say yes and prioritize one thing, you're choosing to deprioritize something else. There's always a trade-off. Join us today and learn how setting boundaries help hold your personal and professional lives together so you can incorporate and make space for both. Lisa Danforth is an awesome warrior. She's a serial entrepreneur, business growth strategist, and leadership coach. Lisa's 30-year warrior journey includes multiple business, beginning in a family business where she knew she wanted to be an entrepreneur, get this, by the age of 8. She has opened and operated 2 catering companies, a professional cleaning company, and an international wholesale childrenswear company, which she sold for more than 35 times her initial investment. Awesome. For the last 8 years, Lisa has been a business strategist and leadership coach. Lisa received her bachelor's in business from the University of Southern Maine. She's certified by the Coaches Training Institution, CTI, a certified The ONE Thing Facilitator, co-active coach, and graduate of Tara Mohr's Playing Big Facilitators course. Lisa has been dubbed by her clients as the hand-holding ass kicker. I love that. I laughed every time I read it while I was practicing, since she matches just the right amount of push with a dose of love. Please join with me and welcome today's speaker, Lisa Danforth.
Thanks so much, Randy. I really appreciate it. I'm super excited to be here. This is a topic that I'm just so incredibly passionate about. And I just want to say that this is going to be a conversation. I did not put together a PowerPoint because where I find the traction is the most is when we have a conversation, when we're in dialogue, when we can actually be working through things. So I don't have a PowerPoint, but I will say you can ask questions as we're going through. There will be a Q&A at the end just to sort of lean in. But often when we're going through these types of things, something's going to pop into your mind and you want to ask a question or make a statement or something like that. Certainly feel free to, or you can just wait until the very end. But again, this is a conversation. I don't want to just be sitting and talking with you because I want you to walk away with tangible things that you can start to implement. So who's ready to jump in? Okay, there we go. So I want to start with a question. What do resentment, frustration, overwhelm, and stress have in common? Anyone want to sort of either post in the chat, raise your hand, unmute and shout out something? Resentment, frustration, overwhelm.
Those are emotions we impose on ourselves.
Yes. Absolutely. Anyone else?
They also cause you to have your health. It affects your health in a negative way.
100%, Dia. Absolutely. All right. That sounds like it's it. So the thing that all of these have in common, and Michael and Dia were absolutely right, but the thing that ties them all together, it's boundaries, or really lack thereof, because boundaries can be so difficult and they can create resentment and frustration. I'm going to ask you, what are the words, again, I told you this is going to be a little participation here. What are the words and the emotions that come to mind when you're thinking about setting boundaries? Is it joy? Is it ease? Is it kind of stress? Is it some overwhelm? What pops up for you? Again, if you can just shout it out, that would be really helpful.
Confrontation.
What was that, Donna?
Confrontation.
Confrontation, right?
Could you just ask the question again? I mean, yeah, please.
Sure. What's a word or the emotions that come up for you when you pause and start thinking about setting a boundary with someone that you know that you need to set a boundary with, having a conversation with someone? Is it ease? Is it comfort? Is it distress?
Okay, the one word that comes up to me is confrontation.
Confrontation. Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Anyone else?
Yeah, there's a word, I can't think of it, but it has to do with maybe accomplishment. Yeah, I guess maybe accomplishment is the closest, because I'm thinking, hey, I've done something that is necessary, that is useful and productive to both sides of a relationship. So I don't know how to put that in words other than what I just said.
No, and it's perfect, because that is what actually happens, right? I want to ask David, because I just noticed that David popped in as well. David, what comes up for you? Is there an emotion that you think about when setting boundaries? Because I know we've had this conversation before.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right, so I just got situated here and I'm using my AirPods. So I would say the main thing is that for me, it's kind of my own emotion and availability, because I one of my principles of operation is running my life by divine appointment. So when somebody asks me to have a one-to-one, if you know me at all, a lot of people here do, I send you a booking link and you get to pick what's convenient on your calendar. I never say no, because I don't qualify. So that's a boundary. The other part of the boundary is what I think about these days is, okay, what are the terms of that yes?
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why I was excited for you to share, because I think it's not, I mean, as you pointed out, it's when you say yes to one thing, you may be saying no to something else. So it is somewhat binary. However, the binary comes from putting more thought into, okay, what are the criteria under which I will ultimately say yes or no? How will I do that? But yeah, I'm reluctant to do it many times because maybe I've given people a more access, more time, if you will, my most valuable asset. Maybe I've given them more up to this point than I can afford to give. Now that sounds funny, but I mean, it's not. I mean, it's, as you say,
all the time.
You're Bill Gates can't buy yesterday. It's, your non-renewable asset. So I'm working on that. That's what I am. But it's hard. It's hard for me to say, no, I can't. No, I can't today. Yeah, but just like right now, balance is the key. Right? I'm in Kansas City. I'm going to my high school reunion. I'm getting to see my mom, and I'm trying to do some work. So it's just how you allocate that.
So what the word I heard you say is it's hard. And someone else said confrontational, right? And what Lloyd was saying is it can actually feel great. Where I see most people settling in with is boundaries can really feel hard. They can feel divisive. They can feel unfriendly, kind of like you're here, I'm here, and we can't cross. We're not taught how to have healthy, respectful boundaries. So what happens is we don't speak up and establish our boundaries. We don't say no. We don't put limits around our calendar to connect with people because it feels hard. But what if I told you that the people who are the most compassionate are also the most boundary? because boundaries keep them out of resentment, right? They are authentic in who they are and truly showing up. So I want you to be thinking of that as we're moving through the conversation today, that the people who are the most compassionate are the most boundaries. So for those of us who have difficulty setting boundaries, thinking about and understanding it's actually how we are in authentic relationships with ourselves and with others.
Just one more thing, Lisa. I think boundaries can be very positive if you, like in a situation like this where we know we have limited time. Setting boundaries helps to keep us within that time and get a positive outcome for our conversation.
100%. That is keeping us out of resentment for someone talking way too much, consuming far too much of the time. But it is, again, often hard for us to actually set that boundary. You have 1 minute to actually articulate it.
Right.
But when we can connect to that positive outcome is when we can actually speak our boundaries, establish our boundaries on a hook from what other people are thinking and saying or what their response might be. So today,
especially within existing relationships.
100%, right? Because you have,
those are the hardest.
We're going to talk about that, right? We've agreed to show up a certain way. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about no is not a 4-letter word. It can be hard. It can be confrontational, but it doesn't always have to be. Like we've talked about, leaning into the other side of it allows us to establish those boundaries. And often have no problem with boundaries, say with our family, but we actually have a huge struggle with our clients. So there's one area that we can lean into that's a little easier than others. So, but before we just jump in, I just want to back up for a little bit and just, Randy already talked to you about who I am, but I also want to say that I am not a passive observer when it comes to boundaries. I have to choose them every day and be intentional. And boundaries are a choice. It's a process. So please keep in mind that as you're learning boundaries and stepping into more boundaries that support you, it's going to be a process as you're moving through. I also want to ask you to please set an intention for what is the highest use, what would make this today, the time, exceptional for you, right? What is the outcome that you want to learn? Is there one area that you struggle with boundaries that you want to learn something? So being intentional is going to help you listen differently and engage in the conversation. So I'm going to take a little sip of water while all of you just take a few seconds and set that intention so you can be listening with a different set of ears. And then one more thing. Can we also admit that whatever we say here stays here? When we're talking about boundaries, it's often things that are dear to us that we have to get vulnerable to be able to talk about what are the boundaries that are getting in the way, right? So what is the mindset and all of that component? Can we agree also that is, yeah, okay, awesome. So there's going to be 3 areas that I'm talking about today. Now, there are many different components of boundaries that we could talk about. There's so many different angles and lenses, but where I find when we combine these 3, we make the most amount of traction. And those 3 areas, the first one is mindset and beliefs. The second one is communication and relationships. We often have a ton of difficulty communicating our boundaries. And the third is habits and creating a plan around that. So let's just jump right in. We're going to move through. We've got a limited amount of time, and I want to honor everyone's time here. So let's start off with that mindset, that belief system. It's the foundation for everything that we do. And Zig Ziglar, I love what he had to say when he said, I am, 2 of the most powerful words in the English language. For what you put after them shapes your life. The thing is, we won't act inconsistently with who we believe ourselves to be. So that means that, at least for the long term, we might put ourselves out there, but we don't go all in. We have 1 foot on shore, 1 foot on boat, and then we don't succeed. And then we're like, see, I'm horrible at that. So we won't do anything inconsistent with who we believe ourselves to be, because all behavior is belief driven. All of our actions, our feelings, our habits, even our opportunities are tied to our identity of who we are. And the thing is from the time that we were very young, we were told what our boundaries are. Our parents told us what was right, what was not right, how we could behave, what was good, what was not. Also our culture, maybe our religion, Then we move to teachers, and we go out into the world for a boss, and we're told from all of these different angles what our boundaries are. So think of it as a radio frequency. So you're receiving all of these outside frequencies instead of listening to your inside frequency. And then the no from inside of us starts to get tamed, and it starts to get quiet. Now, think about a 2-year-old. When we were younger, a 1-year-old, we knew our boundaries, right? We knew that the word no, and we would shoot it out there. But the thing is it definitely became tame and quieted because we were told how we needed to behave. This mindset gets in the way of us speaking up. It gets in the way of us being authentic in our relationships and saying, hey, that doesn't really work for me. Or, geez, I found that kind of upsetting, and I want to talk about it. So again, think about it as a radio frequency and start tuning into your frequency. You may want to listen for the other ones, but not always make choices from them. Now, the thing is figuring out what your boundaries are and where you need to put them, where they need to come from. It comes from inside of you. It comes from inside of all of us. You are absolutely born with that awareness, and it's time to reclaim. Lloyd says children should be seen and not heard. That is exactly what we were told at a young age. Very rarely were we invited to the conversation. And if we spoke up, we kind of got dissed. We learned from a young age. So what happens is that's the lens through which we see and experience life. We don't even understand it's there because it's like oxygen. It's just how we were told to be. And we show up that way without questioning it. And the thing is our yeses and our nos are creating the future that we want to experience. There is always a trade-off. When you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else.
Right.
So it's incredibly important to go within and look at, is this something that I want? Or is this something that I'm told that I want or I need to be, or we're constantly shooting all over ourselves. It's those boundaries that are going to help us establish what it is that we want and how we go about getting it. Because I think we can all admit not everything matters equally. So we've got it there.
You just made me realize that I spent my life saying a lot of no's as opposed to yeses, because conditioning that I've experienced in my life, that seen and not heard, the overwhelming message was no. It's no, no, no. And I've been saying a lot of no's in my life. I've been very resistant to a lot of stuff, like social media. I want to do social media. I'm not going to do social media. But everybody tells me social media is great for your business, but I'm still saying no to social media. So you just made that connection for me. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Right. And the no's can support us, but the yeses can also support us too. We can be saying no to so many things because we're told we're not supposed to have this. We're not supposed to want this. It can absolutely go both ways.
I'm thinking the no's aren't good for me, though. I need to start saying some yeses. Is what I'm thinking. Thanks.
Yeah, well, I have the opposite problem. Well, I get it. So maybe you could share how those two are diametrically the same.
Yeah, and to Lloyd's point, and I kind of a little bit disagree with you, but I may have not understood it. We shouldn't let those no's drive our lives. We need to balance them, and some of those no's are made for our safety. Yeah. Okay, don't stand on the railroad tracks when a train is coming. But a lot of those no's, like you said, are no's that we learned early in our life, all right, because our parents were either bullies or they were looking out for our safety. But as time goes on, we have to make the adjustment, because our parents are not going to come back to us when we're 13 years old and say, remember all those no's that I told you when you're 2? Forget them. Okay.
Yeah, but the problem is by the time you're 13, you've assimilated that, and it becomes the oxygen in your life.
Right, and that is it.
You don't know what you don't know at that point. There's a book called Go for No. There's even a book out there called Go for No. It teaches you to go for no.
It is, and that's exactly it. So it comes from within, but we have been taught to be looking from without. So again, thinking about it in terms of frequency, radio frequency, let's start tuning into our own frequency, pausing and being intentional in connecting. And I'm going to talk about this with habits in just in a little bit, of really connecting to the habit that's going to allow us to say yes to what we want more of and no to what we want less of. So I wanted to share a quick story about a client that I have worked with, and we've been working together for a long time. And Julie, when she came to me, she said the only thing that she wanted, and she's a bookkeeper, the only thing she wanted desperately was to have no more overdraft fees. Right? So we were looking at her business, going through her business. She's a brilliant woman, so amazing at what she does. All of her clients absolutely love her. But when it was time to increase her fees, the boundaries around what it was to work with her, what was the investment, how it was going to operate, she refused to up the fees. Meanwhile, she was undercharging. She was starting to get way too much work, and just it was too much for her. When we stepped back and looked at the belief system, the mindset behind that she wasn't worthy of charging that amount. Her work wasn't worth it. She still struggled. The mindset was still there because her belief was driving the behavior, but she hadn't looked at what that belief is truly. And so when we step back, the one small thing that I suggested that she do is the next time when she's going to be asking for more money, she's meeting with a client and letting them know that the investment to work with her is going up. And when she doesn't do it, or maybe instead of going $10 more an hour, she goes $2, I asked her to visualize literally taking something off from her child's plate and handing it to the client. That was enough of a trigger. That was enough of a flip for her to shift the mindset that I am not a person who takes things away from my family to give to the clients to make them comfortable at our discomfort. So there's often ways that are simple, but not easy. So I would really invite you to lean into those boundaries. Success requires boundaries, no matter what success is for you, financial, personal, health, whatever it is. But please pause. Take a moment to pause and be intentional before you say yes. When you can step back from that automatic yes or that automatic no and connect to what you truly want, as opposed to having it be the lens through which you see and just automatically reply, create that pause, and it gives you enough of a distance. I mean, it could be 2 seconds, it could be a day. And I'm going to give you some tools in just a little bit when we move into the communication and relationship piece. But the key here is pause. There is immense power in a pause. So let's move into relationships and communication. Like I said, communication is where people, I find, really get tripped up. It's their thought about what someone else might possibly be thinking of them that stops them from speaking up. It's not even so. But the thing about relationships, our desire, our yearning to belong is so incredibly deep that we will do nearly anything to get that feeling of belonging, including stepping over our boundaries and morphing ourselves to fit in so we can feel a part of a community. Donna says the pause is one of the most valuable things. The pause is powerful. It's small, but boy, does it pack a punch. But that belonging and fitting in is to step back and be able to look at that. Am I doing this as a part of a community and I can feel like I can show up and be my authentic, awkward self? Right? Or do I need to sort of morph and fit in? Now, this quote by Brene Brown, I absolutely love. She said, fitting in is the greatest barrier to belonging. That to me, and I'm going to talk about that in a sec, absolutely changed the trajectory of my life. But the thing is, the boundaries that you need for your decisions and your relationships, again, don't come from outside of you. They come from inside of you, those boundaries. So the key is going to be pausing and unhooking from what other people think. It is our responsibility to speak up. It's not our responsibility how it lands. So be pausing and looking at, are you reacting and not set a boundary because of what you think how someone else might react to your yes or your no? The thing about boundaries, and this is a big one, it seems so simple, but this is big, Your boundaries are about what you will do and what you won't do. They're not about what other people will or won't do. I can't tell you how many people I've heard who have said, I've set a boundary, but they're just not respecting the boundary. Your boundaries are about you. You're the one that's going to have to uphold them, not the other person. Now, if that person continually steps over your boundary.
Enforcing them. That's the hard part.
Speak to that a little bit, Don.
Well, when the boundaries are broken, then, if it's been made clear and there's some kind of, retribution that's going to happen, that's when I have to be brave, because my deepest fears I've done a lot of this work in the last 15 years. So I already recognize what you're saying was, my shadow belief is that everyone's going to reject me. So if I have to set a boundary, I don't set boundaries because I'm afraid of rejection. When I do set a boundary, and it's not respected, then I have to enforce it. And there comes that fear of rejection again. And then I have to make the new belief that, well, I'm worth it. I don't want to be surrounded by people like this. And, do you got to cut them off? And I found the hardest place to set boundaries was with my existing family, because they'd been so established for so long. And everyone's like, whoa, you never did that before.
And that is so key, because we live into that piece, that mindset piece. I'm going to give some tips and tools in just a few minutes about how to start establishing those boundaries, how to start speaking up, how to let other people know that things are changing. So,
okay, my biggest boundary issues right now are with my cats, so I hope we're going to cover that.
No, I don't have any animals in this conversation, but I could probably.
Dave said you were going to help me.
Well, with your cats, how about we set it? Well, how about if we take that one offline and we chat about it?
Okay, I'll hire you for that.
Yeah, but the thing is your cats are really important to you. So you step over your boundaries because they are.
No, they step over mine.
They probably claw at yours. But here's the thing. I just want to back up. The belonging versus fitting in. Belonging requires us to be who we are, to speak up, to establish our boundaries, to say what is okay and what is not okay. Fitting in requires us to have less boundaries, to not honor our boundaries. So be pausing and looking at where might you be saying yes to something or no to something because you're too uncomfortable. You know that you don't want it, but you're not willing to speak up and have that uncomfortable conversation. So here's what I would recommend for those of us who struggle with our boundaries, but also the communication of your boundaries. Give the gift of transparency. If you've always shown up and been a certain way and agreed to dance that dance with that person, if you're always the person at the office that takes on the last minute project and stays late, and all of a sudden you're just ignoring it, or maybe you're the spouse that has always made dinner, just for example, but it's no longer working for you. You're starting to feel resentful and stressed and not having those boundaries. Give the gift of transparency. Easy. It's not simple. So what I recommend that you say is, if it's a family member or someone that you love, I love you enough to have this difficult conversation, or I respect you enough, or you're important enough to me if it's a client. I love you enough to have this difficult conversation. I know that I've always agreed to do X, or I've always been the one to X, but I got to be honest, it's not working for me anymore. And I'm feeling resentful, and I don't want to feel resentful because you're so important to me. Can we come to the table and have a conversation how we can have this work for both of us? You've got to step back and give the space for the other person to step up. You've got to invite them to the conversation, and don't automatically step forward if they don't, step back in if they don't step forward. Give the gift of transparency. Because if you've always done something, then you just stop, it's going to be confusing and people think that you're just being a jerk or you're having a bad day or week. When you start to do this, there will be something called the toddler effect. I dubbed it the toddler effect. It is when you start to establish boundaries and say, this is no longer working for me. Like you, Don, if you're starting to establish the boundaries with your cats, they might get a little ticked off, amp up their, their climb, whatever it may be. But that toddler effect, the kid in the grocery store that knows exactly what pitch to hit to have the parents be like, here's the candy bar, here's the bag of chips, here's the ball, just be quiet, right? The people around us also know that, right? Whether it's conscious or unconscious, whether it's subconscious or you just out there, that they know the look, the huff, the comment, the dismissal that will get you to shift back in place. Expect it, but don't accept it. Unhook from what the other person thinks. Because here's the thing, it is your responsibility to be clear, direct, and respectful. It is not your responsibility how it lands on the other person. I hate to tell you this, you don't have that much power to control the other person. You are able to, if you want to morph yourself and change things so that that person isn't uncomfortable because of your new choices that honor who you are. But it is up to you to state it and to unhook from what the other person thinks. When we can come from that space, we can be respectful, because if we do it in a disrespectful way, then you're just a jerk. And the change that you're seeking won't actually happen. Now, as you're moving into this, understand that boundaries can be fluid. You can have very firm boundaries. You can have very porous boundaries. Fluid boundaries are really where it's at, because people will show you where you have to have firm boundaries. Even one person might be flexible. So be looking at who are the people in your life that need firmer boundaries, and start getting clear on what that conversation needs to be. Are there any questions on this whatsoever? I noticed that there were some comments in the chat. David or Randy, or there's something that I need to sort of address, or you want to wait till the end?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I'm not normal on this call, and I just happened to have a day off today, and I said I got to join Dave's call. And am I ever so glad that I did, because you're talking to me, lady. I mean, everything you're saying is ringing true or making sense to me, because my other call that I am normally on, a lot of that stuff, one of the latest conversations is how to repair relationships, right? And that's what you're talking about, essentially, is repairing a relationship. So it was like, whoa, so thank you. I'm glad to hear all this. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for showing up. And that goes back to what I had said at the beginning. Those who are the most compassionate are also the most boundaried. They do truly improve our relationships, but we get so fearful of what other people are going to say. Time is our most valuable resource. Let's start honoring that and being who we want to be and being around the people that support and sustain us. That doesn't mean you have to push people out of your lives or cats out of your lives, but you might just minimize the time with the people who are not respecting you, or don't fill you up, or don't. Yeah.
If you can't change the people around you, change the people around you.
Exactly. I have heard that. I absolutely love it. I love it. Anyone else want to sort of join in and talk a little bit about that, or we can move into that habits and self-care component?
Well, when I was a young man growing up, all of my cousins and uncles and aunts and everybody, we hugged each other. It was just a big Southern thing. In fact, my cousins would kind of bear hug me and kind of swing me around and around, even as we, got older, teenagers. I thought that everybody hugged everybody. Then at about 21 years old, I moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area because I wanted to move up north, see what Yankee life was all about. And one of the first people that I kind of gave a side hug to was a older gentleman at church, and I thought the hair on the back of his neck was going to stick straight up. He like froze. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that, at 21 years old, that everybody didn't hug everybody. And I immediately figured out that there was a boundary there. Don't touch him. Don't hug him. But I don't know if he thought I was a jerk, or I thought he was a jerk. I'm trying to think back on it, but sometimes you overstep boundaries, not even knowing you do it.
Exactly. And that's so true. But I also would really invite everyone here to understand that that gentleman's boundary isn't everyone's boundary, as you know, and it's not just north and south, right? It is everyone's individual boundary. And he told you that, not verbally, but you got it. And there's other people. So we need to not always take one person and move ourselves and our actions in accordance to one person, because that person didn't like to be hugged. And especially nowadays, I always ask, because of COVID, I mean, people are very standoffish. Is it okay if I hug you? But absolutely. And I'm from New England. We don't do a lot of hugging. But thank you for sharing that. All right, I say let's jump into habits and self-care.
Lisa, let me add one more thing. So one of the things to connect the dots a little bit is you said something earlier in the conversation about inviting them to the conversation when it comes to boundaries that you are perceiving to be violated. And Ricky actually gave a good example. The challenge is that he didn't know that there was a conversation to be had. To assume that other people's boundaries, whether you've had a long or a short relationship with them, are the same as yours, or to assume that they understand the impact of their crossing a boundary that they didn't know exists, is really the key. Is having, number one, knowing, being self-aware, but then also having that conversation, right? I mean, I think that's essentially what you were getting at when you said invite them to the conversation. I know I'm working on that, because again, you can assume somebody's going to be hurt or offended or not want to do business with you or whatever, but until you have that conversation, it doesn't work.
It can't. People are not mind readers. It would be really great if people, well, it'd be scary sometimes, but it'd be great to have a lot of people be mind readers so that we wouldn't actually have to speak up, but that isn't the way that it works. But I agree 100% with what you were saying, David. And we don't always have to invite them to the conversation, meaning that guy that didn't like to be hugged, that was really clear. That was a boundary that didn't need to be spoken. That was clear. But the key is to not make choices from that for everyone else in the north or wherever you go moving forward. It's to pause and to gain a little clarity on yourself, to pause and think about, be intentional in how your actions are. That's where the growth really is again, like Donna said, that pause is it's powerful. So thank you.
Yeah,
David.
Thank you. I'm going to have to check out. I have another client call here in a few minutes. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thanks, Don. Bye. So let's jump into the habits and the self-care, because habits, I absolutely love habits. I'm a habits junkie. And one of my favorite quotes is by F.M. Alexander, and it is, people don't determine their futures. They determine their habits, and their habits determine their futures. Goes back up sort of to that mindset piece. We are what we repeatedly do. And that is incredibly important, because it's the habits, it's the habitual response that gets in our way without observing what it is. So again, be looking at your habits. When we want to be shifting how we're establishing our boundaries, or how we're showing up, or how we're interacting, it's really important to know a term called time and consistency, which is behavioral economist of this term. And it is, we value the present more than we value the future, meaning we value the present of making sure everybody is comfortable, that we're not upsetting anyone, we're not ruffling anyone's feathers at our detriment, right? To make sure that it's easy. But the cost is in the future of losing our self-trust, our self-confidence, not speaking up, and all those things, that the boundaries that impact us. So be looking at where that time and consistency may be coming up, because the thing is we need to start creating what's called identity-based goals, that mindset, identity-based goals, identity-based habits, because we show up in a certain way because of our habits, of our beliefs of who we believe we are. Again, you could put one foot on shore, one foot on boat, and fail. One of the ways I like to explain this, which is very simple, is let's just say you are looking to become healthier. If we are at the time of consistency, we're valuing the present more than the future, we're going to hit that snooze button instead of getting up at 5 a.m. to get out for a walk, or maybe we won't prep the food for dinner at night. And we wind up eating, chips and cheese or whatever it is. The reward is in the moment. It's ease. The cost is in the future. It's not trusting yourself. It's not creating that life that you want. Now we can flip that as well. If we want to be healthier, or whatever the area is in your life, it's important to connect the dots with the choice in the moment is the cost. I'm going to put on my sneakers and get out for a run. The reward is in the future. So start creating identity-based habits, identity-based goals. The beautiful thing is it only needs to be 51-49 to start shifting that identity and start leaning into that more often. So boundaries are a process. It's not a one and done. Remember that identity base, you're going to start leaning into that a little bit more. And the things is self-care is a requirement for boundaries, and boundaries are a requirement for self-care. It goes hand in hand, and our bodies are going to give us signals when we're stepping over our boundaries, when we're not honoring our boundaries. And again, self-care, like boundaries, are a practice. We need to continually choose self-care. Self-care isn't just diet and exercise. Self-care is how we treat ourselves, and that becomes a habit. One of the ways that we can start shifting that habit is understanding what the trigger is in our body. What is the feeling like when, like I said, our bodies will give us signals? What is the feeling when we're stepping over our boundary? What is the resentment? And I want to wrap up with a quote by Viktor Frankl, which is one of my absolute favorite quotes. And he said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. I would invite you to pause and step into that space and own your growth and your freedom, and the choice is yours. So I would love to open this up and see if we have a few more minutes for a conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Not a conversation. You reminded me of this quote by Jim Rohn. Says, "You will pay the cost of discipline or the cost of regret. The cost of discipline is light. The cost of regret is heavy. You choose what you want to pay," which is what I'm hearing you say. And I totally agree with Viktor Frankl. Today, I try so hard to respond as opposed to react. It's not always easy, but that's the smarter choice, is to respond as opposed to react. So thank you. I like everything you've had to say today. I really appreciated hearing you.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thanks for showing up. It's the conversation, right? It's really jumping in and leaning into it. And it's being intentional. It's pausing, being intentional, and choosing. It's very simple, but it's not easy. And this is where we can get tripped up. I know I should be doing this, yet I'm not. And then we beat ourselves up. And then we live into that mindset. I'm horrible with money. I'm horrible with time. I'm horrible with getting back to people. It is a almost synergistic quality that it can either go up or it can spiral down.
So I wonder sometimes, I have often just assumed that reading people and seeing what their boundaries are was maybe a learned process, that people can learn that. But then I get to thinking there's some people that have that ability almost naturally to read someone else, and other people will never have that ability completely. I've known people before that they had the reputation of they were the last one to leave a party. They never had the that social thing where they could read that it's time to quit, or the party's over. Hey, I'm the last one here, and it's midnight, and so I'm just wondering maybe if there are people out there in the world that have a very, very hard time reading other people. If we're talking and I'm yawning, the person can look at me and say, well, he's uninterested or he's tired or something, but some people don't see that at all. They just march right on. And one of the things that we have tried to do in networking is to sort of warn everybody that when you have a one-on-one, it's not a sales meeting. And even when you do that, there are people that just march right on through acting like it's a sales call. And I'm just wondering if those people don't have the natural ability to read other people. I just,
I mean, we all have an ability, and it's a muscle. And if they were not taught, if the boundaries were not set, I've been in one-on-ones as well, the one-to-one get-togethers, and it's like it is all about them. We get to choose and sit there, or we get to say, Ricky, it's been really great chatting with you. I'd love to share a little bit about myself. Or, this has been a great conversation, but it is 10:30 and it is a half an hour past my bedtime. I got to get going. Don't mean to be disrespectful, right? It is speaking up. This is the thing. It's about you. You're allowing someone to stay a half an hour past when you wanted to boot them out the door. It's very simple, but it's not easy. Right? If someone is not honoring one of your boundaries, it's our responsibility to speak up. Now, we don't have to be jerks about it. Like, dude, I can't believe you're still here. It's midnight. Leave. It's, I thank you for coming. It's been a great conversation. Or if you're at a party and someone won't let you go, excuse yourself to the bathroom. What are they going to say? No, there are ways, but we need to be intentional about it. And we need to be get comfortable with the uncomfortable of having those conversations, or we get to continue being who we are. And if that is okay, if you're happy with it, do not judge it. If you would much rather morph yourself and make the other person comfortable, be really clear that's okay if that's what you want. David's talked a couple of times about not saying no to other people. If that is creating the life that he wants, there's nothing wrong with that. But we have to pause. We have to choose, and we need to be intentional in creating the life we want. We need to know what we want and how we go about getting it. Is this person that I'm in front of someone that is important enough for me to change who I am? And do you really want to be with someone who's going to be like that consistently? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have any insight on that? Like a shift in your mindset?
Talking to me?
Yes.
Well, I'm not uncomfortable telling people that, but what I feel, I sort of feel sorry for people who can't read. They can't read the situation, or they can't read the other person, and they just march right on with whatever they're doing or saying. That's why I was wondering, is just from being around a while, that it seems like there's some people who don't have that natural ability to read the situation, and those people must have terrible problem with boundaries,
Yeah, the boundaries aren't always people not respecting our boundaries. There's many of us that don't respect other people's boundaries, but they haven't been taught. They are doing the best with the tools that they have. Randy.
I'm glad you brought that one up, because I'm struggling with one, not personally, but I go to the senior center for bingo and stuff like that. And we usually meet beforehand, before we get lunch. And there's this one lady, very nice lady, but she does this all the time. Somebody else can be talking, and no matter who it is, no matter what they're talking about, she'll just take over the conversation, and people let her. Now, it bothers me because I think it's rude, but it obviously doesn't bother her, and nobody else has told her to shut up. So I guess I just let it ride, right?
You can choose to.
Right.
I've experienced a lot of people like that. And it is, and you have to choose what's most important. This is the key, right? So for me, it is important, and I will either, hey, I'd love to jump in, or, I want to add something to that. Or when they take a breath, even if it's for a split second, start talking and don't freaking stop.
Yeah.
They will
eventually. Because everybody else stops down when she interrupts.
You what?
Everybody else stops when she interrupts them.
Right. So that means that you don't need to. And then what's going to happen is you're going to start setting the tone, and she's going to start seeing that.
I doubt it.
But that's okay. It's not your responsibility.
That's right.
Yeah.
Some people don't know what boundaries are.
Right. Exactly.
Very true.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
absolutely. All right, where are we at time here? I want to honor.
Well, we're at 12:34. Is that what everybody else has? Depends on what part of the country you're in, I guess.
I'm 1:30 in Vermont.
So you've got we have a hard stop where everybody can bail on you at 1 p.m. our time, which is 2 p.m. your time. So we maybe have 5 minutes at the end for announcements or whatever. So we're doing good.
We're doing good. Okay. I was thinking.
I'll holler at you if you need to land the plane.
All right. Well, and then I say, let's just open it up to more conversation. Whoever wants to talk and whoever needs to jump out, that is okay too. That is your boundary.
So anybody on, yeah, just open your mic and I'll so somebody started to talk. Donna, you want to?
Yeah, it was me. Yeah, I was just continuing from what you were talking about before. And that it is not our responsibility for other people and their lack of boundaries. And it's just an indication that they have not yet finished that work with the relationship with themselves. So, we just do not need to get into that.
I think that is a really amazing insight, because we do sometimes feel like we need to be the one that's teaching them, kind of like what Randy was saying. But if you are within that sphere all the time and this woman is always at your table, maybe you request that you're not at her table, but we don't have to take that on. Don, I think that is such a powerful comment. We get to remove ourselves,
right?
But sometimes we just want the fight.
But I think as we were sitting here, and Donna, thanks for the addition. I guess even if I decide that I need to do something, it shouldn't be in the room with the people that she's interrupting. I should probably just find a moment and say, were you aware of that? And if she says, yeah, I'm aware, and that's just the way I am. Okay, fine. And she's that type of person, right? And that's fine, as long as she knows about it. Let somebody else walk away.
Yeah, clear is kind, unclear is unkind.
Right.
Okay, so when you're clear of, hey, I would, and when you state that and she's fine with it, what I would recommend is you saying, I actually find that disrespectful and I would greatly appreciate it.
That's exactly where I'm coming from.
Yeah, right.
But the other people seem to let her walk all over them.
That's not your responsibility. That does not impact you. Let go of that. You have no control over it.
Right.
Why? But here's the thing that I would invite you to be looking at.
Okay.
Why does that bother you so deeply? I mean, it would bother me as well. Don't get me wrong.
Because I was raised, as you were talking earlier, the way I was raised was rule-based, all right? And if I did that, and I still do, I do interrupt other people, but I'm aware of it now. If I do it, I'm conscious of it. And if I continue it, that's a choice. If I stop, that's a choice. But at least now I can see it in myself. And so therefore I see it in others. And that's just the way I was raised.
Right. So it's the lens through which you see and experience life. It's the frequency.
Right. Yeah.
I want to share that as a coach, it is part of my job to ask people to bottom line. So if you were talking, I am a part of a group program. I run a group program. And when someone is attached to a story and isn't noticing that it's gone on for 5 to 8 minutes in a 1 hour program, it's my responsibility to say, hey, Randy, can you bottom line that? We've got just, can you put it into 1 or 2 seconds, 1 or 2 sentences? That you get to choose to do that. It's, again, pause and be intentional. Do I want the ramifications? Is it that important?
Right.
Or do I just
I've chosen that it's not that important.
Right? And that's the key.
I'm supposed to say, if it's more important to somebody else, then let them do it.
Yeah, but one thing you said, one thing she said, which don't lose sight of, is, again, to communicate it. I don't remember your exact words, Lisa, but to communicate it is kind. To not communicate it is not kind. You also said something that's important, is the way and the audience of your communication needs to be appropriate for the situation. But nobody that I've ever encountered where I have confronted them on a boundary violation or habit of, especially if they have a habit of violating boundary, then you're actually not only helping them connect better with you, but you're helping them connect better with everybody else who doesn't have the guts to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Right? So you served her, or you would serve her by having that conversation. If you choose to invest, you don't have to.
Right.
As Donna said, you don't have to own that. On the other hand, if you like the person, hopefully, you know, I love everybody. I just don't necessarily like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But if you like her and you want to serve her, right, then you've just done a great thing. It's a beautiful investment.
Right. Thank you,
Yeah.
both of you.
It's I just want to, I've said this several times. It's very simple. It's not easy. So we need to show ourselves some compassionate curiosity. What's going on for us? What is the belief? Why do I need to be the one that tells her to stop talking over people? And I hear, so what you're saying, Randy, I would be the same way. But having some compassionate curiosity about what's going on for us, what the beliefs are, and why our actions or reaction is what it is, it allows us to make different choices. Having said that, I would also say implement graceful accountability. Don't beat yourself up. Don't let yourself off the hook. If this person's really agitating you and you didn't speak up this time, and it's that important to you, don't let yourself off the hook. Pause and get clear on what is the conversation that you want to be having? What is the outcome that you want from this conversation? How do you want her to feel? How do you want to feel? Who do you need to be in this conversation to be comfortable and confident with who you are and showing up? Be curious, compassionate curiosity. When we approach an issue from the same lens through which it was created, you can't change it. But when we take the lens off and we have that true, pure, compassionate curiosity for ourselves and for others, it's amazing what can happen. We can unhook from what other people think, but we can also unhook from the need to show someone that they're doing something wrong. Because let's admit, it's our view. Other people might not think that it's wrong. It's our perspective. David, you've been quiet. You want to jump in? Oops.
Actually, I'm going to actually ask Dia, because Dia is new to the group, and she's also trying to see how the sausage is made. So she's going to do this on September 16th. So you can return the favor, Lisa, and show up in her mastermind if you're available. So because I love the dynamics here, and this obviously is a very important conversation. But Dia, you posted in the chat some of your own takeaways. Anything that specifically resonated with you, or you with 8 kids and all the things that you deal with? I know you have to be a master of boundaries, but are there any thoughts or ahas for you?
I totally agree with everything. So much valuable information, Lisa. Thank you. The reminder that we're only responsible for our actions and how we are, not their reactions, and how people are being is how they're being, and shouldn't, it doesn't affect us. We don't have to
react.
Yes. And we sometimes just have to give up the right to be right. Just, yeah. And it is simple, and it isn't easy. So yes, I really appreciate it. I enjoyed all the input from everyone. I have been sort of taking notes in the chat. If you want to save the chat, if you know how to do that, then you'll have the summary of what was said.
I can't remember how to save the notes in the chat, but I will do that before we jump off.
Yeah, you just click on the little 3 dots where it says open up the chat, and then click on the little 3 dots to the right, the far right, and
chat.
one of them says save chat. But I would recommend you save it just before you get off so that you catch everything.
I just saved it just in case.
And if you got off late, you'll have, or got on late, you'll only have from the time you got on. But anyway, that's
okay.
Little
Thank you, Dia.
tutorial.
Yeah.
I wanted to compliment Lisa's background. Is that your room, or is that the real room, or is that
It's a real room. It's real plants.
Well, since I've been kind of a web design nerd myself, your background looks like a well-designed web page, and I mean, everybody sort of copied Apple's web page, years ago, where it was a white background and not too much flash. I just want you to know that it's the most, since we've been doing these Zoom things, yours is one of the most easy to look at backgrounds. That white background is so easy on your eyes and it's not distracting. And some people's background is maybe like mine. Mine's in my music room and I got stuff everywhere, but I just want to compliment you on that. That is so easy to look at because it seems so organized and so happy and so light. And I think dark backgrounds sometimes are not really good for websites or for Zoom backgrounds. So I just want to compliment
you. It's funny you said that, Ricky, because I have been looking at it this whole time, and I would call it balanced imbalance. And I like it too. It just, it's not distracting. It's soothing.
Right.
And I'll bet you intentionally did it that way.
I did, but it's so interesting because I always think it's a little boring, but I think the work that I do, and Donna pointed this out, especially with boundaries a while ago, the work I do is really hard. Boundaries is really hard work, right. Very simple, that it's so important to make everything else around us as simple as possible so that there's no distractions. There's no wild print in the back.
You want them to focus on you and what you say, not, oh, look at that picture. What does that say? What does it mean? Oh my God. And the next thing you know, you're 20 minutes down the road and they haven't heard a word of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well done. Thanks, Ricky, for bringing that up. Same thoughts. Great minds travel in great places.
Lloyd, I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear a thing.
So I'm getting a complex about my background.
I love it. It's fun. Okay. But your background has to fit who you are. It has to be authentic. I think that is the most important thing. I am type A. I like things clean and organized. So for me, this is a really great space for me to show up. If Lloyd, if that background for you makes you energetic and is more in alignment, go for it.
And that's a relatively new background for Lloyd, at least that I've seen. And it is not his typical Lloyd background, I must say.
Yeah.
Because he's a pretty conservative guy.
I am.
And that's not a conservative background. This is bringing out the hippie in him.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. I got to run. Lisa, thank you so much. That was great information I learned. You reiterated a lot of stuff that I've learned and inspired me to take action and stuff. So.
Yay. Thank you for sharing that. I so appreciate it. And thanks for taking the time today, Lloyd.
Okay. I hope you're going to tell us that you have a book.
I do not. I've had many people tell me I need to write a book.
God, you need a book.
Yeah, Donna's laughing because she's probably told me a few dozen times.
I'm helping her with that.
Yeah.
Before everybody leaves, I wanted to ask this question. I was here letting people in to be participants, and a person by the name of Kim, it looks like Lamey, never would. I asked, you could be a participant, and she never would. Does anybody know Kim Lamey? I just wondered if it was just somebody who just came in out of the blue. But I've never had that happen before when I was hosting a Zoom meeting that I allowed someone to be a panelist and they never did,
That has happened several times in the last couple of weeks, Ricky.
Okay.
People don't know if they're going to be put on the spot, so they'll stay off. And then David posted a bunch on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I shared some stuff. So it could just be someone from social media that wanted to pop in and see what it's about.
Okay.
Hopefully they'll be back. All right, David, can I call you out for a little bit? You want to know? You're like, Okay.
Are you referring to me?
David Gurno?
David Gurno.
Okay. Yeah, David. I was just going to do the same thing, ask him what he's got to say.
Shook his
first.
head. Set that
Well,
boundary, David, if you want to. That's okay.
There's just a lot of information to absorb, you know, with personal development.
Mm-hmm.
That's my comment there.
Thank you.
And I would agree. And I took a lot of notes as well, not for publication, but there's a few things that I disagreed with, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
That happens every week, Randy.
right? Yeah, right. That's right. We're all entitled to our own. I mean, how we raised, what our beliefs are, all of these kinds of things. But in general, I would say, yeah, I think this has been a great talk. To hear other people say some of these things is, I'll say supportive. I can't think of the right word. You know, things that I believe. Sometimes the things that you have talked about, you've suggested, are hard to implement.
Simple stuff, but not
Simple,
easy.
but hard
and
to
that's
do. Exactly.
I just want to share a quick story. A lot of my clients, they'll get tripped up. Let me just back up for a second. Like in the self-care of the habits, I have a client who I do work with my clients in that what's one thing that you like, what is your goal? And what's one thing that you can do that will make everything else easier to move towards your goal? So we often, if we're focusing on our business, we think it needs to be business oriented. For me, it's actually fun. When I'm doubling down, shoulder in, grinding, I know that that's actually working the opposite. For her, it was self-care. So when she doesn't honor her self-care, it actually negatively impacts her business. Her back goes out, she gets a migraine, she gets the flu consistently. She knows the importance of it. And this is what I want you to really take away from this. She knows that the one thing, or she knew, she's doing much better now. The one thing that's going to support her business growth all the way around is making sure that she takes time for self-care. But yet she continued to kick that can down the road. She continued to eat during her lunch when she said she was going to get out for a walk. So when I talk about self-care, what she would say, she's like, there's such shame that comes up because I know I need to be doing this. So then she would avoid that conversation altogether. Right. So just sort of be curious about where do you know you need to be doing or saying something. The discomfort of it is creating, whether it's shame or however you want to phrase it, that it's getting in the way.
Okay. If I may, so I introduced you, so I've read through your bio and things like that, and I've heard a great deal of you today, obviously. And can you say what it is that you do today? Because I'm having difficulty tying what it said in the bio with what I'm hearing today.
Oh, excellent question. So I'm a business growth strategist and a leadership coach. Okay. The foundational component of the work that I do is really understanding who we are. It's the mindset piece. I can help people put together the most elaborate, gorgeous, amazing strategy. I can help people lead higher. But if we're not clear on who we are and the boundaries that are required, we're building everything up on a house of cards. So it is impossible to have success without boundaries. How do we prioritize? So it's the work, today's conversation is truly laying the foundation for everything else to build up from. When we don't pause to prioritize or set goals.
That makes sense to me because I'm a business growth strategist and have been my whole career, but I lack the element that you bring to the table.
Well, and that's the case, Randy. I mean, the problem is titles and categories. None of us should be put in a box.
Right.
Everybody has their own approach. I mean, you know me, and my intention or my main focus, and the thing, if somebody's really not clear on, you know, why they're here, what the value they bring, and where they're going, or that sounds kind of simple, but it's not. Just like drawing boundaries is simple, but it's not. It's hard, but it's simple. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Right. But the thing is, you've got to go back, and a coach or a consultant or somebody that you've got outside yourself, like Lisa, you engage because you resonate with their focus, the thing that they bring to the table. They're filling that gap, if you will, or they're giving you that discipline or focus that you don't have. And anybody who is a coach, I can tell you, I'm certain, I haven't talked to Lisa, I don't know why, I'm certain she has coaches or she has mentors. And I have coaches and I have mentors. And I know Dia does. And
you're my mentor.
Yeah, and everybody here, right, is if you're getting it, you have things to offer. And I that's what I see. And the thing is, it's just whether you do it in your case pro bono or for free, or complimentary. It's nothing's free, because remember, we trade off one time. Time is our most valuable asset. So you're complimenting people with your most valuable asset. On the other hand, if you're monetizing it, then then you're really looking for those people where you can fill the gap that they have. You can move them as quickly as possible toward that, and they're looking for you. This is a two-way street, and there's millions of people, right? So that's a great question, Randy. I'm glad you asked that, because somebody could say, well, she's like you, or she's like, no, she's not like me. She's better look.
There's nobody like me.
Yeah, but we're all different. We're all unique.
That's right.
Right? We all have unique values. So the key is becoming aligned with a coach or somebody or a mentor or somebody in your community that fills your gaps. Right?
Absolutely.
And can help you along your path.
Is it appropriate to share some of the results that I got from working with Lisa?
Of course. Yeah, you've got about.
I did not ask her to do this. I want to be.
You didn't ask her to do this. It just fits right in.
Okay.
I'll do it quick. I have done values exercises at least 20 times. My values always came up as the same. They were always, about being productive, about getting things done, about, the grindstone, and not disappointing people. And my values changed, and working with Lisa helped me see that, because I have done an enormous amount of healing work. And when she sent me the values thing, I was like, oh, I don't want to do any more values exercises. I know who the hell I am. I'm 58 years old. And they were different.
Yeah.
My value now is fun.
Oh, cool.
Well, and the cool thing about that, Donna, and I will just say that you're not as unique as you think, and how you get there and how you change your values. The interesting thing is, Lisa said this very early on, and this is why I love Lisa, is that she said, I said it in the chat at one point, it's what is the source or the reason you say no, or what is the source of your values? Is it coming from your life purpose, or the reason God has you on the planet? Is it coming from your unique value that you can add? And is it coming from a place of knowing that it's moving you on the path towards where you want to go? And if you don't make that conscious decision, then you think you have values. You can fill out those value assessments and I filled out every one that's ever been created, I think. And no, but I don't want to, because no, I'm teasing.
You might have fun.
I told you I was getting ready with my Bloody Mary on the plane, but so I'm the comic relief today. But I would just tell you that it's brilliant. And the thing is, it sounds, Donna, like you've found somebody that aligned with and served you and filled those gaps. And I know Dia has those people, and I know I have those people. And everybody, even those who don't call themselves a coach, I guarantee you there's people around you that know your unique value, and they call on you when they need help.
Yeah, so anyway, coach, I help
and to like that, David, I would just like to add that now I've been involved with David for a bunch of years now, and obviously sat through a lot of these. And Lisa, and I know I'm going to embarrass you here, but this has been one of the most intellectually fulfilling sessions that I've been party to.
Thank you. I'm humbled. Thank you very much.